It began, as many strange things in my life have, with silence. Not the comfortable kind that comes from being alone on a yacht in the middle of the Pacific, but a silence so deep, so unnatural, it felt like the world had forgotten to breathe. I was 2 days out from Tahiti, having taken a break between shoots to clear my mind, when the engines quietly stilled and the sea turned to glass. No wind, no current, and not a single gull in the sky. Just a horizon that stretched on forever, blank and indifferent that I'd chosen this route deliberately. Somewhere between the coordinates etched in the back of an old conservation journal and a few rumors I'd heard from islanders over the years. Whispers, really. About a place that couldn't be found unless it wanted to be. I never put much stock in sailor myths, not until the GPS blinked out and my satellite phone buzzed static like an old cassette winding down. That's when I saw it, that a line of land, low and dark, rising from the water like the edge of a dream you can't quite wake from. No name. No signal. Just, there. I should have radioed someone. I should have logged it. Instead, I dropped anchor and took the skiff. The beach was fine white powder, untouched by tide or time. And the forest beyond it was denser than it had any right to be. Jungle vines coiled like sleeping serpents, and the trees stretched so high they swallowed the sun. I walked inland, drawn by something I couldn't name. That's when I found the house that it was made of weathered wood and stone, partially swallowed by roots, like the island itself was reclaiming it. Inside, it was empty, or should have been. Dust lay thick on everything, and yet a small metal camera sat on the table, as though just placed there. Old. Pre-digital. The kind my dad once used when I was a kid that I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected, the kind of weight that suggests memory. The film was still inside that I brought it back to the boat and developed it in the tiny darkroom I kept below deck. It took hours. Maybe more. Time felt different. But when the image came into focus, my hands went cold. A black and white photo. Faded but clear enough. A man standing in front of the same house, same angle, same camera. Same face, mine, except the date scrawled in the margin said, August 14, 1943. That I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, but from the realization that I had just walked into something vast and hidden, a truth buried beneath stories and tide. And I couldn't leave it alone. Not now. The island hadn't moved when I woke. The silence still hung in the air. But now, it was waiting, and so was I. By the second morning, the lines between reality and recollection had already begun to blur. I stood at the bow, watching the mist curl in slow spirals off the water, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me back. The island hadn't moved, still a quiet smear of green and stone on the horizon, but something in its posture had changed. Like it had noticed me. Like it had let me see that photo for a reason. That I returned with more caution this time. The air felt denser, as though it carried memory instead of moisture. As I stepped back onto the white sand, I noticed faint depressions in the shore. Footprints, not mine. They were older, partially erased by time but still visible in the soft grain. They led toward the house. I followed. The structure hadn't changed. Vines still clung to its skeleton. The camera still sat where I left it, but now there was something else, an envelope. Yellowed, cracked at the seams, tucked beneath the floorboard just inside the doorway. No name, no address, just the unmistakable feel of a message that had waited too long to be read. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single page, handwritten in looping cursive ink that had faded to rust. If you are reading this, it began, then we share more than a face. My breath caught. I don't know how this began, the letter continued, but I have been here before, and I suspect you will be here again. This place doesn't exist on any map because it isn't a place in the usual sense. It's a knot, a tangle in the thread of time. Some call it cursed. Others, a gift. I believe it is a mirror. No signature. No origin. Just that impossible voice from the past, or future, mirroring my own. That I folded the letter back into its envelope with trembling hands and looked around. The room felt warmer, as if exhaling around me. Outside, the jungle murmured with sounds I hadn't noticed before. Birds with no familiar call. Leaves rustling without wind that I decided to explore further inland. I left markers behind, stones stacked in threes, the kind I used while hiking remote trails in my 20s, but something in me already doubted they'd still be there on my return. The deeper I went, the stranger it became. The forest narrowed, the trees forming a tunnel that led into a ravine. At the base was a pool, perfectly still, reflecting not just the canopy above but stars, clear, bright constellations in broad daylight. I knelt beside it, mesmerized. My reflection stared back at me. But it wasn't my face now. It was younger. Cleaner shaven. The same haunted look I wore during the filming of the beach years ago, just before everything changed. Then he blinked, not me. Him. In the reflection. I stumbled back. The water didn't ripple, heart pounding. I scanned the trees, half expecting to see someone, a double, a ghost, a film crew breaking the illusion with clapperboards and cues. But there was only the jungle. Silent, knowing, ancient that I don't know how long I sat there, waiting for something to emerge. But when I stood again, I noticed a carving on a nearby stone. Symbols I didn't recognize at first, then realized they weren't symbols. They were initials. LD, etched deep into the granite, weathered by rain and time. Below it, another line, return before forgetting. What was I supposed to forget? I stumbled back toward the beach, breath shallow, vision spinning slightly. The markers I had left, gone. The path twisted differently now, as if the island itself had reshaped in my absence. When I finally broke through the tree line and reached the shore, the skiff was still there. The yacht, still floating in calm water. But on the beach, leaning against the camera I had left in the house, was a second photo, not in the camera. Not tucked away. Just resting there. Waiting that I picked it up that it was me again, but older. Noticeably older. Laugh lines deeper, eyes tired in a way I didn't recognize. Standing beside a woman I didn't know. She had gray in her hair and one hand on my arm like she'd known it forever, and in the background, the island. But different. The house was whole. Painted. Lived in. On the back of the photo was one sentence, it always begins with silence. I turned in place slowly, feeling the weight of those words. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was slowing. Matching the stillness of the island. As though I was sinking with whatever this place was. The sea didn't move. The wind didn't blow. And somewhere beyond the trees, I heard something faint, impossible, a projector spinning up, the soft click of film feeding through a reel, like someone had just hit play. That I didn't return to the house that evening. I couldn't. Something about that photo, of a life I hadn't lived, with a face that was still mine, left a pressure behind my eyes, like memory trying to surface too soon. I stayed on the yacht, watching the shoreline, half expecting it to vanish in the dark. But it didn't. The island remained fixed beneath the stars, lit by a moon that felt too close, too white. I didn't sleep. Instead, I laid in the cabin, turning the photograph over in my hands until the edges curled slightly from my grip. That I remembered the woman's face, not from my life, but from a dream I had years ago while filming Shutter Island. She'd been standing at the edge of a dock, holding a small wooden box. In the dream, I never saw what was inside, only the way she looked at me, not like a stranger, but like someone waiting for me to remember. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't leaving. Not yet. This time, I packed supplies, water, rations, a knife, the photo, and a voice recorder. I needed to document this, if not for others, then at least for myself. As I reached the shore again, I noticed something strange. The footprints I'd seen on the first day were gone, but in their place, a new set had emerged. Smaller. Lighter. Barefoot. They led not toward the house, but toward the North Cliffs, an area I hadn't explored yet. I hesitated, every logical part of me urging caution, but my feet had already begun to follow. The path wound upward, at times barely wide enough to stand on. Below, the sea stretched out like a mirror. Above, the sky was too clear, like it had been emptied. Halfway up, I found something that stopped me cold. A stone bench, just there. Embedded into the cliffside, as if carved centuries ago. Moss had begun to claim it, but the seat itself was clean, worn smooth by time or use. I sat without thinking, and as I did, the wind picked up for the first time in days. Not a breeze, but a warm gust that carried with it a smell I hadn't encountered in years, lavender and burnt paper. I knew that scent. It had clung to my grandmother's old studio when I was a boy. A room filled with forgotten canvases, cracked brushes, and a record player that hadn't worked since the 60s. That room was demolished when I was 12. Yet here, it lived again. I pressed play on the recorder, day 3. Something is happening here that I can't explain. This place isn't just uncharted. It's alive. Not in a metaphorical way. I mean, it remembers. I listened to my own voice, oddly detached. The sound echoed faintly off the rocks around me. And when I clicked stop, I heard a second voice. Not recorded. Not imagined. Real. It said, "You found the bench." I turned so fast I nearly slipped off the edge. There, a few feet away, stood a boy. Maybe 10. Pale skin, sun-bleached hair, wearing clothes that didn't fit the time, khaki shorts, suspenders, and a shirt buttoned too tightly. He looked at me without fear, eyes clear, knowing, "Who are you?" I asked, my voice rough from silence. He smiled faintly. "I'm part of the memory." "What does that mean?" I stepped forward, but he didn't move. "You'll know soon." He turned and began to walk down a slope I hadn't noticed before. I followed, too stunned to ask more. The slope curved inward into a hollow beneath the cliff, shaded, still. There, nestled among overgrown ferns, stood a single gravestone. No name. Just a date, August 14, 1943. The same date from the photo. I knelt slowly. The boy had vanished, but I wasn't surprised. Instead, I touched the stone. It was warm. I pressed record again. "There's a grave here." Same date as the photograph. No name. Just the island, remembering. As I stood to leave, something sharp caught my ankle. A root? No, it was a wire. Thin, rusted, connected to a small mechanism embedded in the ground. Carefully, I unearthed it. It was a tin box, sealed tight. I forced it open with my knife and found inside a letter, tightly rolled and brittle. I unrolled it cautiously. The paper threatened to crumble. The message was short: "If you found this, then the island has chosen you. You are not the first. You will not be the last. When the tide turns blood red, it is time to decide." Below it, in faded ink, was the same looping cursive I'd seen before. This time, it was signed, L.D. my own initials. My own handwriting. The paper dropped from my fingers, because I remembered writing it. Not now. Not in this life. But once. Somewhere far away, or far ahead, the tide, I realized, had begun to shift. And in the distance, the sun was setting. The sky over the water pulsed faintly, with red. By the time I made it back to the beach, the tide had already begun to turn. It wasn't just red, it was glowing. A deep, pulsing crimson, as if the ocean itself had been lit from beneath by veins of fire. It didn't spread like a sunset. It seeped, slow and deliberate, coating the horizon in a hue too strange to be natural. And yet it was beautiful. Horribly, impossibly beautiful. I stood ankle-deep in the water, watching it curl around my feet like warm breath. It didn't sting. It didn't burn. But it felt alive, curious, maybe even expectant. The photo of me and the woman still lay tucked in my coat pocket. The recorder hung from my neck, its red light blinking. I clicked it on again, my voice quieter this time. "The tide is changing." The message said to choose when the water turned. But choose what? Behind me, the island was silent. But not empty. I could feel it now, a slow gravity pulling me not backward or forward, but inward. I followed the footprints again, the small ones, barefoot, the ones I'd seen earlier, but they had multiplied. Dozens now. Some larger, some smaller. All leading to a part of the jungle I hadn't dared go before. The path twisted, not like a trail but like a spiral. With each step, the air grew warmer, thick with a scent I couldn't name. Not flowers. Not rot. Something between memory and ozone. The sound of my own breath became rhythmic, timed perfectly with the blinking of the recorder's light. And somewhere behind that, faint but rising, came the sound of music, that a piano, playing slowly, deliberately, one note at a time, that I knew the melody. It was something I'd played, years ago, alone in my New York apartment between auditions. A piece my father had taught me on a rainy Sunday. I had never recorded it, never played it in public. Yet here it was, threading its way through trees that should not know it, that I reached a clearing, that I in the center stood a building, not the house I'd found, not a ruin, but something new. Or old. Or perfectly preserved. A theater. Not a grand one, but familiar. The kind you'd find in forgotten towns, red velvet seats, gilt trim worn down by decades of palms and applause. Its doors stood open, inside, every seat was empty. The stage bare. But the piano played on, that I walked to the front row, sat, and waited. After a moment, a woman entered from stage left. The same woman from the photo. She was older now. Or perhaps I was younger. Her steps were light, but sure. She sat at the piano and began playing the melody again, perfectly. Her eyes never left mine. "You made it further than most," she said. That my throat tightened. "Who are you?" "You already know. You remembered me. That's how the island speaks." "Why me?" She smiled faintly. "Because you listened." I looked around. "What is this place?" She paused on a chord. "Some call it a fold. A tear in the reel of time. You know how it feels. You've lived in it before. Characters that weren't fully fiction. Moments that felt too precise to be coincidence." I didn't argue. I couldn't. "Why show me all this?" She rose, came to the edge of the stage. Her eyes were filled with something between sadness and peace. "Because you've lived many lives, and in most of them, you forget. This time, the island gave you a choice. You can return. Wake on the yacht. Blame it on exhaustion and imagination. Or stay." The word hung there like a stone in still water. Stay and what? Live the life you left behind. The one that still waits here. With me. My heart pounded. "But, none of this is real." She touched her chest. "Then why do you feel it here?" I couldn't speak. Behind her, the piano played itself. No hands. Just keys, moving in that same aching rhythm. "You wrote the letter," I said. L.D. I helped you remember. "And the boy? The grave?" "Echoes," she said simply. "The past bleeding forward. The future reaching back." I turned to leave, to clear my thoughts. And that's when I saw it, and I in the aisle beside me sat another photo dummy, sitting in the very seat I occupied. Eyes fixed forward. A tear on my cheek. The same coat. Same moment, dated August 14, 2043. Exactly 100 years after the last. That I turned to ask her what it meant, but the theater was empty. No piano. No woman. Just silence, and then I understood, the decision had already been made. That I was staying. There's a peace that comes with the ending of something, when you no longer need to run from questions, when the silence finally feels earned. That was how the island felt now, still, not dormant. Not dead. Just, at rest. After the theater vanished, I walked for what felt like hours. There were no more signs, no strange sounds, no echoes from the past, just trees and sunlight, and the soft crunch of my footsteps on a forest floor that had grown familiar. I no longer feared getting lost. I knew that if I turned around, the path would reshape. That if I asked for direction aloud, the wind might shift slightly and answer that I didn't test it. I simply walked, back on the beach. The tide had gone out. The sea was no longer red, no longer glowing. Just water again. Blue. Deep. Indifferent. The yacht floated where I'd left it, but it felt smaller now. Unnecessary. The recorder still blinked faintly in my pocket, but I didn't touch it. Instead, I sat by the old camera one last time and opened the final envelope. I'd found it tucked beneath the gravestone after returning there that morning, half expecting it to be gone. But it waited. Inside were three things. The first was a short note, written in that familiar script. My own, but aged. If you stay, time forgets you. But memory does not. Choose well. The second was a photograph. Me. The woman. The boy. All standing outside the repaired house. We were laughing. I held a journal in one hand, leather-bound, with a title embossed faintly in gold, The Lost Reels. The third was a KEY.NO explanation. No tag. Just metal, cool and old, with teeth like it hadn't been used in decades. That I looked up. The jungle whispered softly behind me, and I knew that I never set foot on the yacht again. I pulled it close to shore, secured it, and left it where the trees could claim it slowly. If someone found it one day, maybe they'd find what I left aboard, a stack of tapes, the voice recordings, the photos. Maybe they'd follow them, maybe the island would let them. Or maybe it wouldn't. In time, I found the house again, not as I'd first seen it, broken and reclaimed, but whole. Clean. A fire already lit in the hearth, though I hadn't built it. On the table, a journal waited. Blank pages. And the old camera, freshly loaded with film. That I took the key and unlocked a small drawer I hadn't noticed before. Inside, another letter. This one only had a single sentence. The story continues when someone chooses to remember. I live here now. Sometimes I wake with echoes of another world, red carpets, flashing lights, the scent of makeup and wire-rigged microphones. I remember awards in my hand and lines from films I no longer watch. But they feel like someone else's scenes. Someone else's script. Here, I build. I write. I tend to the land. The woman visits. The boy laughs in the distance, always just beyond view, like he's leading me forward, one memory at a time. And the island, it breathes softly. Eternally. That it doesn't ask for anything, only that I stay, only that I remember, and I do, because some places aren't meant to be found. That they're meant to be returned to, when the time is right, when the reel begins again.